Now, with respect to the issue of whether gays and lesbians should be able to get married, I've spoken about this recently. As I've said, my feelings about this are constantly evolving. I struggle with this.
Why do you care if two gay guys want to get married?
So from a religious point of view?
Sure, let's go from religious first.
So, why don't we do a secular point of view first? So
Okay.
the idea is not that I care deeply whether two gay guys want to get married to each other.
My understanding of gender and sexuality is a little more complex than I'm afraid you're coming from.
It is complex, I'll grant you that.
Jesus already taught us how to pray. He taught us to pray our Father. If you're going to teach people to pray a different way than Jesus taught his disciples to pray, that would be the epitome of pride.
So I guess my question is, why would you not respect God's pronouns?
Well, because clearly there are other places in Scripture where God uses other pronouns. I think your view of what the Bible is inaccurate. The Bible is not the inerrant Word of God, quite clearly.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. I just showed you 3 clips back to back to highlight how our culture has shifted on the topic of gay marriage. The first one was Barack Obama just 14 years ago saying he struggled with the idea of gay marriage. That was the view of a liberal Christian president not that long ago. The second clip was Ben Shapiro, a conservative voice. He presents a more nuanced take, separating his religious belief from a more secular, legal view on the issue. And the third clip featured Michael Knowles in a conversation with liberal clergy who are all in on radical inclusivity, even within the sacred space of the church. Now, think about the shift here. First, a liberal who's unsure, then a conservative who splits the issue into 2 categories, and finally, a full-on secular ideology pushing its way into what should be only seen as sacred. So what has happened here? Well, Bishop Barron has a powerful insight. In the next clip, he talks about how the decline of moral reasoning is tied to where we've ended up with gay marriage today. Don't miss that in the clips I showed, there was a decline in moral reasoning from both liberal and conservatives. This is a big issue, y'all. Let's take a look at what Bishop Barron has to say, and then we'll unpack it together.
In his great text, After Virtue, the philosopher Alistair MacIntyre laments not so much the bad state of morals in the West, though that's true enough, but he laments something deeper and more fundamental, namely the fact that we've lost the capacity even to have a coherent moral conversation, that our assumptions are so diverse, that we've lost a common vocabulary and set of concepts for even approaching ethical questions, that we don't argue with each other, we talk past each other, or more likely, we scream at each other about moral issues. Well, I thought of Alistair MacIntyre's observation recently when I read an account of one of the days when the Supreme Court was considering this much vexed issue of gay marriage. And Justice Elena Kagan, just appointed by Obama, was quoted as saying this. She said, whenever a lawyer makes a moral observation in a case such as this, for me, the red flag of discrimination goes up. Well, I was really struck by that because she didn't say, whenever someone makes a bad moral argument, the red flag of discrimination goes up. It's simply, whenever someone makes a moral argument, period, the red flag of discrimination goes up. Now, I'll leave to the side a fundamental inconsistency that I'm making a moral objection, discrimination, to a moral argument. So I'll leave that to the side. But I'll say this, MacIntyre coming to mind. We've lost the capacity even to have a coherent moral argument. So all we can do is simply excoriate our opponents as bigots or practitioners of discrimination. We don't engage them in a serious argument where we line up points of view and see who's got it relatively right, but rather we simply excoriate our opponents as bad people. Now, this is precisely why an awful lot of Christians are worried around this issue, because those who voice any opposition to gay marriage, for example, are usually characterized ipso facto as bigots or people simply engaging in hate speech. Now, if you doubt me on this, look especially at a country like Canada, where this has become a very serious matter of even legal problems. If someone expresses publicly a view against gay marriage. Is someone who's making a moral argument, let's say against this emerging consensus, simply engaging in hate speech, or is the person proposing a real argument? I think that's the breakdown that is evident in a remark like Kagan's, and it was predicted very much by Alistair McIntyre. Here's another sign of this breakdown. Our obsession with poll numbers around moral issues. So on this issue, for example, we hear almost every day that increasing numbers of Americans are supporting gay marriage, especially among the young. Here's the thing about poll numbers. Poll numbers are interesting sociologically, they might be interesting politically or psychologically, but in themselves, they don't tell us one little thing about what's right or wrong. Go back to the year 1945. If you'd taken a poll in our country, let's say in the early summer of 1945, I'd be willing to bet 98% of Americans would have said it's good to drop the atomic bombs on Japan if it brings the war to an end. I think a lot of very good people would have said, yeah, go ahead and do it. If it brings this terrible war to a conclusion, that's okay with me. Poll numbers would have said, well, 98% of Americans say it's fine to drop the atomic bomb on innocent people. Or go back even further, go back to the early 19th century. I bet if you'd taken a poll of this country, you would have found very few Americans who would have said that slavery is morally outrageous. I bet most people, even North and South in 1825, would have said, no, slavery is a legitimate practice. And they might even have appealed to religious sources to do it. My point is that poll numbers in themselves don't tell us much about moral rectitude. Sometimes a lot of people can find something that's morally repugnant just fine, and sometimes only a tiny handful can find what's really morally splendid to be right. And so it's another sign of the McIntyre problem. Here's still another sign of it. What I call the sentimentalizing of moral issues, now especially the issue that we're looking at now of gay marriage. What I mean is this. Let's say in the past, 25, 30 years, increasing numbers of gay people have come out of the closet, so that now more and more people recognize their brothers and uncles and friends and so on as gay. Now, please don't get me wrong. I think coming out of the closet for gay people is a very good thing. I don't think living lives of self-reproach and recrimination, all that is a good thing. So that in itself, I think, is praiseworthy. But the result of this is that increasingly people say, well, my uncle, my brother, my cousin is a gay person, and they're good people, therefore gay marriage is a good thing. And see, that's what doesn't follow. I think you can say, in most cases should say, that uncle, brother, cousin, etc. are good people. But it doesn't follow automatically that everything a good and decent person does or wants is morally right. What happens, though, is a sentimentalizing of the issue where we don't make arguments, we have more of a sentimental connection. That's why, for example, I'm not terribly impressed when a politician says, for example, I've discovered that my son is gay and therefore I support gay marriage. Well, again, I'm very glad that a politician loves his gay son. I think that's a terrific thing. But it doesn't follow, therefore, that gay marriage is necessarily a good thing. When we make that move, we've sentimentalized, we haven't made an argument. Now, the attentive viewer of this video will have noticed that I haven't made that argument, and that's on purpose. That might be for another video. What I want to do, though, what I wanted to do in this video was simply clear away some of the fog. Because I find it's very difficult even to approach this issue. Because there's so many obfuscating issues that prevent us from really coming to terms with the arguments. And I think a lot of it does go back to what McIntyre noticed, that we as a culture have a very hard time engaging in and making and taking seriously real moral arguments.
Let's connect what Bishop Barron said to the 3 clips played in the beginning. Bishop Barron is really making 3 moves. Firstly, let me remind you of what Barack Obama said.
With respect to the issue of whether gays and lesbians should be able to get married, I've spoken about this recently. As I've said, my feelings about this are constantly evolving. I struggle with this.
This connects perfectly, I believe, with what Bishop Barron is saying about sentimentality.
I'm not terribly impressed when a politician says, for example, I've discovered that my son is gay and therefore I support gay marriage.
Obama struggles with gay marriage because he has friends that he loves and cares about that are gay. But notice that that is a breakdown in moral reasoning. It's letting subjective feeling win over what is objectively true. All right, let's circle back real quick to what Ben Shapiro said, because it ties into something Bishop Barron brought up about polls.
So, from a religious point of view?
Sure, let's go from religious first.
So, why don't we do a secular point of view first? So,
Okay.
the idea is not that I care deeply whether two gay guys want to get married to each other.
Shapiro and a lot of conservatives like him have started separating their religious beliefs from their political ones. They've created two categories, a religious view of marriage and a secular legal view. Now, I think it's fair to say that as this issue has grown in cultural weight, many conservatives have shifted and softened their stance on the issue. Part of that might be sentimentality, like Barack Obama, but there's also this shock factor. A lot of people in the gay community are now identifying as conservative. So what happens? Politics starts to carry more weight than our religious viewpoints. The conservative identity or the political identity becomes more persuasive to us than our religious convictions. And that's the key tension. Are we being guided by objective truth or just going along with the crowd? That's why Bishop Barron warns against looking to polls for moral clarity. When we base truth on popularity, we lose the foundation of moral reasoning. And the third connection, I believe, is pretty obvious. When a society becomes unable to reason morally, we get conversations like what Michael Knowles had with those clergy. So Bishop Barron gives us an invaluable insight here. At the heart of the gay marriage debate, it isn't about politics or policy. It really is about a crisis in moral reasoning and our religious viewpoints. What starts as a wave of sentiment, wanting to be kind, wanting to be inclusive, slowly reshapes how we think. Sentiment overtakes reason, and over time, that reasoning gets nuanced out of its religious foundation and reworked into a purely secular framework. Eventually, the secular reasoning doesn't just stay out there in the culture either. It starts to push its way into our sacred spaces. It begins to overrun our religious institutions. So what we're seeing isn't just a cultural shift, it's an entire spiritual erosion of a society. And it's rooted in the way we've stopped thinking morally. We have lost our ability to argue with each other about morals, and therefore we have lost our ability to think. And that's a problem, y'all. All right, that's all I have for this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Remember that Christianity is Christ, and without Christ, there is no Christianity. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.